Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever worked for a leader who was incredibly smart but could not lead people? Maybe they were the best like engineer or claim professional or accountant or nurse or whatever, salesperson, technical expert on the team. Then they became manager and everything changed. Not because they were not intelligent, not because they didn't care or have concern, but because the skills that made them successful were not the same skills that they needed as a part of leadership. I believe organizations continue to make one fundamental mistake. They assume that every leader begins from the same place. Whether you lead a Fortune 500 company, a government agency, a nonprofit organization, or you're building a business with a team of 10, let me ask you one question. Are you the leader you would love to lead? If you have the privilege and the responsibility of leading people, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Kimberly Dunlap, founder and chief research officer of the We're researching one central question. Why do organizations continue to develop incomplete leaders? Every week, we'll explore the research, challenge conventional thinking, and share practical ways to help you become the kind of leader people trust, respect, and genuinely want to follow. Organizations often promote people because they've demonstrated competency and strong performance in a certain area. Like I often say, you hear me say all the time, they're the best widget maker there is, or they have the best rapport with everyone on the team, or however. But leadership requires capabilities that may be different as a part of leadership than the ones that made them produce success in their previous roles. And what I know is that organizations often overlook what it takes for people to be effective leaders versus effective employees. And there is a difference. Right? So excellence is one discipline that doesn't automatically translate into leadership effectiveness. What do I mean by that? You can be an excellent widget maker, right? Now, I love a widget. So you are the best widget maker. No one does it faster. No one does it better, or anything such as that. But when it comes time for you to lead people and get behind the strategic mission of the organization, you're lost. Right? This is what often happens. And what in turn it leads to is leaders, new leaders, being miserable in their jobs. It leads to people who were highly effective in other realms of their job or in the business, and now they're failing. It leads to leadership burnout because although they were effective employee, now that they're in a leadership role, they're only drawing from a very small bank of skills versus being a holistic leader and being able to contribute to the organization as a whole. So, promotions are often based on yesterday's success rather than tomorrow's leadership responsibilities. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Most times, promotions are based on yesterday's success rather than tomorrow's leadership responsibilities. So Most time when people are promoted, they're promoted based on what they have done in the past. They are evaluated for their ability to be adaptive in the new role. So when they go through, when they interview for this position, they ask usually situational type questions about what would you do if, how would you handle this situation? And this is all based on the skill set that they currently have. It's not very often that organizations conduct interviews based on the strategic vision of the company and how you'll be able to add to it. Right? So most of the interviews are based on what you have done in the past and what made you successful in that role. No harm in that. But when you are forging or building a company that is sustainable, profitable, and future forward, that's never going to work. It does not work. The other thing about promotions is that the new title usually provides a person with the authority given in that title, but it does not automatically create leadership readiness. And quite often, and and please do comment in the place it in the comments if as a leader or a new leader or a newly promoted leader, you were assessed for all of the qualities needed for leadership or did the organization just have the mindset that all of those things would eventually come to you or that you would learn those on the job? Let me know if there's something different, because I have not had the privilege of seeing many organizations that train or assess their new leaders on their readiness to be in the leadership. Again, most promotions are based on what you have the capability of doing or what you have done, with the glimpse at the capabilities that you will possess or you possibly possess, and how well you fit into the culture of the organization to become a leader. Usually, it's not very often that a company says, well, we want to make sure that you are able to see the strategic vision of the company and execute or implement that. It's not very often. Let me know if that's different, and I would love to hear um, if that's something that's different. But that has not been my experience, readily been my experience. So what usually happens is an individual is promoted. When the individual is promoted, they get a new title. Sometimes they get a mentor, right, who's been in the role, who knows, the ins and outs of what the role requires from a matrices standard. What is performance wise needed in order to be successful in the organization, or what the organization has dictated as key um, key aspects of the role and what you need to possess or bring into the role. But what my research has told me, and I think I did it in the last video, I explained some of the things or the commonalities that I found across organizations when it came to employee engagement, when it came to leadership development and things such as that. So again, if you haven't checked that out, you can click here, the videos there. And so what I found is that leaders enter leadership from different developmental foundations. What does that mean? What that means is that some establish their credibility through technical expertise. Some of them establish their credibility through operational expertise. Some are established through people, trust, and relationship types of expertises. And then others gain their credibility through strategic thinking and enterprisal perspectives, meaning that they have the ability to look at the organization as a whole and see the vision and where the possibility that the organization could go versus where they are in the technical expertise of the service or the thing that they do right now. Everyone starts at a different point. Now, each leadership competency origin creates meaningful strengths. None of the four have more weight or less weight than the others. We need all four of them. The problem that then presents is that because every leader starts at a different place, not each of the origins is going to substantiate or utilize that leader's best strengths, their talents, their strengths. Not each competency is going to capitalize on those things. And because all of these aspects are needed to lead people, lead an organization to where they're going, to make the best product, to make the best service, to forge ahead and be able to engage individuals and also uh, maximize on people's strengths and skills and things such as that. Because all of these things are needed and every leader starts at a different point or origin, it's a discredit or disservice to a new leader not to at least have them explore all of the things that makes the organization successful. Organizations spend billions and billions of dollars every year in the efforts to develop their leadership, develop their effectiveness, their performance, even their standard, to raise the standard that they have in their leadership models. The problem is that often organizations place leaders of different backgrounds, different calibers in the same leadership program. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem that brings is that it does teach them all the same competencies, all the same competencies. The problem is they use the same sequence and expect the same developmental journey. And as you know, regardless of whether you work with children or whether you work with leaders or however, everyone does not start at the same playing field. So, because everyone doesn't start at the same place, then what ends up happening is that the leaders do not develop at the same rate. And so the program may be useful, but it may not address what each leader actually needs next. So if we have a leader who is educated as a leader, so they know all of the theories, they know all of um, the proponents to be a great leader. However, they have never led people, there's a disconnect and there's a gap. So different beginnings require different developmental pathways. And that is the core of my research. So let me just ask, why do you think organizations continue promoting outstanding employees without adequately preparing them to be in a position of leadership? Right? Add your answers to the comment. Drop it in the comments, and because I do read every comment, and this is a part of my ongoing research. I have been in the employee engagement leadership space um, for 10 years now, more than 10 years. And it has always been the one burning question that I've asked myself or that I've asked organizations. Leaders may overuse their strengths because when organizations assume that everyone's starting on the same playing field, leaders usually tend to overuse the strengths that they have or the strengths that made them successful in the first place. They overuse those strengths, leading to burnout. Okay? Teams experience things like unclear communication, weak trust factors, low engagement, burnout, and worst of all, high turnover rates. That's what organizations face because their leadership is ineffective. You'll hear me say it 1,000,000,001 times. People do not leave organizations, people leave leaders. And then what happens is organizations then have an issue and they struggle with succession, meaning how leaders graduate into the next role, collaboration, because they may not be trained on the art of negotiation and those things. Even adaptability and innovation, a lot of these areas within the organization suffer because the leaders are inadequately trained. A one size fits all type development does not work, and it can actually leave important capabilities unaddressed. And when you think about the sheer cost that organizations are investing on developing their leadership and their leadership model to have any area susceptible to gaps is a failure. So, and then the other thing is that as AI begins to transform workspaces and organizations, the intentional human interaction in leadership becomes more important as AI is, or artificial intelligence is actually assuming data mining and things such as that, things that do not need human interaction. As AI assumes a lot of these roles and these responsibilities, it leaves the human aspect of leadership wide open. And one thing that AI is definitely doing is exposing the gaps that leadership is lacking in organizations, within an organization. So now if this conversation is helping you think differently about leadership, please like this video and subscribe. That helps me out to this channel. And here I just share resources. I share uh, research conversations every single week. The process begins with recognizing where a leader established professional credibility. So where did they start? So we're looking at the origin first. And it identifies specialized strengths. We talk about developmental blind spots that are recognized based on where they're starting and the capabilities the leaders need to be successful in their next role. Development is expansive, and the development is expanding in this instance rather than substituting. The goal is truly just to help leaders retain their specialized strengths while intentionally developing broader integrated leadership capabilities. So we are giving them all of the tools that they'll need to be holistic inside of the new role, to be a whole leader, being sure to address the gaps, okay, and then fill those. So before you leave, I want you to ask yourself one question. What's one thing I can do this week to become the leader I would love to lead? Thank you for investing in the wholeness of your leadership today. Remember, organizations don't become exceptional by hiring exceptional people. They become exceptional by developing whole leaders. And until next time, be the leader you yourself would love to lead. I'll see you next time.